For me, in order to be successful, you have to face your fears, right?
Okay.
You have to be able to overcome adversities. Like, we're all humans, we all go through things. Yes, we can be really successful. Yes, we can, run businesses, and I can say I've run my business for 10 years, but actually what's some of the hardships that I've been through and how have I become fearless?
Yeah.
My mother basically had a stroke when I was 15 years old.
Okay.
Which basically meant that I had to pretty much teach her how to read and write. And actually, some of the hardest things that you go through are the things that make you more powerful in growing. Literally about 10 years ago, I went through a really horrible sort of breakup with my marriage, basically. And it was very, very difficult for me because we got to the point where it just wasn't working. I could barely get up out of my bed.
Wow.
And I remember I used to just sit and I just used to pray. That's all I could do. I just used to pray. I'm a person of faith. I was like, Lord, give me the strength just for this day, just this day. So the way that I always think about fear is actually, what if I don't do this? What does that mean for me? What does it mean for my family? What does it mean for the people around me? And I did something actually that kind of was like, right, you have no excuses ever to be fearful. So I actually jumped out of a plane at 10,000 feet, not tandem like the normal people, not the one where they jump out with other people, but actually accelerated free fall.
Wow.
Yeah, don't ask me why. But I did that really because if I can do that, then I have no excuse.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against All Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your accidental podcaster, and our guest this week is Georgina Wilson.
Hello.
Georgina is the founder and the CEO of Bud. I'm sure she'll tell us about that later. But she's someone I've recently become acquainted with, and she has an amazing story. She's also known as the Black Fearless Female, BFF, right?
The BFF.
BFF. Well, Georgina, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Absolute pleasure.
So to kick this off, Black Fearless Female, where does that come from? What's the story behind that? Well,
for me, in order to be successful, you have to face your fears, right?
Okay.
You have to be able to overcome adversities. And I love this kind of against all odds because it means that you've had to face some stuff, right? We're all humans, we all go through things. Yes, we can be really successful. Yes, we can, run businesses, and I can say I've run my business for 10 years, but actually what's some of the hardships that I've been through and how have I become fearless?
Yeah.
So, I come from a background of entrepreneurship, but the key thing that I've recognized is that you need resilience and you need to be able to overcome your fears. Some of my lowest and hardest moments have been a variety of things. I have been through situations where my parents, my mother, basically had a stroke when I was 15 years old, which basically meant that I had to pretty much teach her how to read and write. And actually, some of the hardest things that you go through are the things that make you more powerful in growing, because what that meant is that I had to take responsibility for my own life.
From a very early age.
But it also meant that it was normal to me. It was normal for me to look at bills and to think about making sure they got paid and start to think, actually, what is it that I want in life? And no one's gonna make that happen for me. I've got to kind of do it. And I did always have a bit of a fight in me, but I think sometimes the harder things cause you to be more successful. Literally about 10 years ago, I went through a really horrible sort of breakup with my marriage, basically. For me, it was like, this is a no-go. Like, once you get married, that's it. You're married for life. There's no such thing as a failed marriage, you just work through everything. And it was very, very difficult for me because we got to the point where it just wasn't working. And there's a whole host of things. I don't want to bore you with the details, but I could barely get up out of my bed.
Wow.
And I remember I used to just sit and I just used to pray. That's all I could do. I just used to pray. I'm a person of faith. I was like, Lord, give me the strength just for this day. Just this day. That's as much as I could do. It's just survive that day. And what was really, really incredible was that in those moments, I really felt God saying to me, support other people. And I was like, I have no strength to support people. And God, I felt, said to me, just give me the little bit that you have and watch what I would do with it. And so that's what I did. I just woke up and I said, okay, whatever I can do to support other people, I will do. And that's really where Bud was birthed. It's been all about supporting people. I have tried my best to be fearless, to overcome my own adversities and struggles, and just be there for others. Sometimes I've got to look after myself more, but there's so much fulfillment and so much grace that comes when you are overcoming your own fears and supporting others. And I always say, no matter what you're doing, whether it's business, ministry, whatever it is, it's never about you. It's always about somebody else. And that's the value that you can add to them. And that's really where kind of Bud became the organisation that it is
today. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why I was keen to bring you on this podcast is this attribute of fearlessness, because we're limited in scope in terms of our ability to, see into the future.
Yeah.
We're not quite sure what the future holds, and oftentimes when we're presented with that reality, sometimes we're crippled by that fear of the unknown and fear of rejection and fear of what people will think.
Yeah.
There's a whole raft of fears. Fear of failure. I've had to deal with it by my own fair share of failures. But then, would you say that as you stepped out, or as a person steps out, takes a decision to confront their fears and steps out, the tendency to be fearful gets less, as you begin to have some wins and begin to see that there is a greater hand guiding you and influencing you and all that. And what could you tell us about that?
I'd like to ask a big favour. Your subscription means a lot to us, because the bigger this platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So do me a favour, please click on the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Now let's get back to this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more you step out, the easier it is to overcome fear. Because I always say, like, what's the worst that could happen? Do you know what I mean? It's like just weighing it up, because fear starts in our minds. It's always, about overcoming the thoughts that we have in our mind and how we can actually be a bit more rational and think, well, if I'm really scared to pick up the phone and make a sales call, well, what's the worst that can happen? They say no. You're in the same place as you was before, but actually, what if they say yes? So the way that I always think about fear is actually, what if I don't do this? What does that mean for me? What does it mean for my family? What does it mean for the people around me? And I did something actually that kind of was like, right, you have no excuses ever to be fearful. So I actually jumped out of a plane at 10,000 feet. Not tandem like the normal people, not the one where they jump out with other people, but actually accelerated free fall.
Wow.
Yeah, don't ask me why. But I did that really because if I can do that, then I have no excuse. And I'm very, very sure and clear about the fact that I have a purpose here on earth to do amazing things by God's grace, right? However, I'm going to have to overcome some mind stuff. I'm going to have to be able to say, this is probably quite ridiculous, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And the key thing about jumping out of that plane at accelerated freefall is you have to jump. If you don't jump, you're going back down in that helicopter.
Right.
So you actually have to jump.
So you're not pushed or anything?
You're not pushed. You have to jump. You have to decide, and you have to jump out of a plane.
Oh my goodness. I'm just...
Not a helicopter, a plane, right? In the middle of the air.
That's it.
And just do it.
Wow.
It was one of the most exhilarating things I've ever done. And it has many times when I thought, my goodness, I'm going to go on a stage and speak, to thousands of people. Can I do this? Actually, yes, I can. And why not? Let's have some fun.
Why not?
And do you know what, as well, one of the things I would say, just enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's one of the key things. I remember, in some of I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I've done many businesses. I'm like, just enjoy it. Pick up the phone, have a laugh, speak to somebody, find out a bit more about them. So what? If they say yes, bonus. If they don't, you got to speak to somebody that you never spoke to, and you got to make their day a bit more
better,
happier.
Yeah. So that's quite interesting, actually, because until I started this podcast, okay, I'm an extrovert, but then I had never... If you told me I started this program, I said I was an accidental podcaster. Because me sitting in front of a camera interviewing people was never something that I, imagined that I would do. Because you're kind of putting yourself out there, right? And people can critique you. People can say, I don't like his style, I don't like the way he talks, I don't like the way he looks. You got all these fears that could limit somebody from trying. But as I've stepped out, I don't really care. I mean, I'm just like, I can't live my life dictated by what other people think, because I can't control what people think.
Yeah.
I can't control how people see me. I can't control, the uncontrollable factors of life.
Yeah.
But what I can control is my decision to make informed, rational steps. Yes. And try to figure this thing out as we go along.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, just to add to what you're sort of saying, I think you've just got to recognise everybody's not going to like you. I don't like everybody, and I don't expect everybody to like me. I'm a bit like, Mum, like, you either kind of really love me or really just think, oh gosh, like, I really don't. And that's okay, because we've got different preferences and different biases, all sorts of things that happen. And if we can understand that, then we stop trying to people please, or we stop trying to think, oh my gosh, spending our energy worrying about what other people are going to think about us.
So to put this in context, what was your upbringing like, and what experiences would you say you went through probably earlier on in life, which helped to make you into the fearless woman that you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the most defining parts was around sort of my mother having a stroke and having to be responsible. But I think at that young age, you don't realise that you are very responsible. Like, I went to college, I went to uni, I, had my own car, I bought a house, I did a lot of things. I did actually still get support around those things, but I made a lot of those choices and those decisions to do that myself. I would say that one of the key things that really pivoted the way that my life was going was when I became a person of faith. For me, that was the ultimate change in my life, because I realised how important my life was and that I had a purpose. And so even sort of what you're saying today around, actually you're doing this, you kind of stumbled upon it, etc., etc. I believe that we all have a real purpose here on earth. And if we don't overcome our fears, that means that we're holding something really precious and really golden back from other people being able to experience. So you don't know that, somebody watching this, they might just need it. It might be the push that they need for them to start their journey. And it might be the one person, but they could impact thousands of people. So if we hold back our treasure and worry about what other people think about, oh gosh, if this doesn't work, if it's failure, all these things, then we're actually stopping other people from accessing that. So there's been several times where I've thought to myself, I'm not good enough. You know, before I would say, even in my kind of early years of coming to my faith, my Christianity, I really doubted that I was valuable. I had situations where I just didn't even want to live, to be honest with you, because I felt so insignificant and unsure about who I was. And it was only because I recognized who I could be, and actually that I had something really valuable to add to this world, that's the thing that just made me really fearless. And if you are really focused on your purpose, it doesn't matter what anyone else has got to say. It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. It's like, I've got to do this because there's people counting on me. There's people waiting for what it is that I have to offer, and I can't not do it.
Wow. So for somebody who's watching, because a lot of people talk about things. They talk about what they would like to have, the kind of career they'd like to have, the kind of things they'd like to do to impact people, the kind of legacy projects they'd like to be involved with. But for a vast majority of people, it never goes beyond, the wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. And as we said earlier, as we alluded to earlier, some of it sometimes might be due to the fear of getting started. What practical advice can you give to somebody who's watching, about how to overcome that fear of getting started?
Yeah, that's always the hardest part, is just taking that first step. So when I do my workshops, one of the key things I always say again is, let's write down the worst things that could possibly happen. So it's moving from the mind and all the reasons why not to the reasons actually why we can, why we should. And what you want to do is just take that first step and make sure it's a small step. It's not the biggest thing that you need to do. It's a small step towards it. So what happens is you start to build momentum, and you get the kind of flywheel effect where actually you've done this very small thing, and because you've done that, you've now built some momentum to do the next thing. So, for example, I've got a really great friend who wants to launch her own online course. And it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to get the course ready. I've got to get the people there. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And I'm like, just get the title. Just write the title. Okay, great. And now just make a plan in your diary for some of the key moments that you're going to need to plan ahead for it. Just get them in your diary. And so you just do one step at a time, one small step. And then before you know it, it's happened and you haven't even really realised. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and it's also celebrating the small wins as well. So I've got a title, right? Let's celebrate. Let's go and have a glass of something bubbly, just, you've got a title. Let's celebrate that. Let's get some Fentimans, ginger beer going, and let's make sure we recognise the validity of those things. I think far too often we're really hard on ourselves, and we're very much focused on what we haven't done as opposed to what we have achieved. So it's taking those small steps, celebrating the wins, but being really practical as well about some of the things that you need to do, but not getting bombarded. That key saying, how do you eat an elephant? Do you know what I mean? Not that we want to eat elephants, right? But how do you eat an elephant? Just one bite at a time. Just take a small chunk out of the bigger picture, and you'll start to see eventually that, oh, you've arrived and you haven't realised.
What about there's a scripture which says that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And I find on this podcast, speaking to various people, that the people who are performing at a high level have a way of thinking.
Yes.
They seem to think in a certain way that others don't.
Yeah.
Okay. And thinking or thoughts seem to play a very large part in anybody's success journey. Like high performance sports people, they seem to have this belief.
Yeah.
It's just this belief that it's going to work, and belief that things will somehow come together. belief that the universe will almost sort of cooperate, to help them to achieve their dreams, Now, how helpful would you say that looking at so there's two schools of thought. You can either look at your own wins over your life and throughout your life. You had little wins. You face that challenge and somehow you got through it. You're about to be thrown out of your house, but somehow you got through it. So you can look at your own experiences and see your wins. What about people looking at the wins of others to draw some inspiration from? Is there any merit in doing that?
Well, I think there is some merit in recognizing that it's possible. So when you can see that other people have been able to win, you can see actually there's a possibility that I can also win and be successful. But then you mentioned something that's really crucial around the mindset. And you've got this faith versus fear. And those are two completely opposite mindsets. As a person thinks, so is he, right? So if you wake up in the morning thinking, do you know what, this is going to be such a bad day, it always is, there's always going to be problems, I'm tired, I'm not going to be able to achieve what I really want to achieve because every day is like this, you're inviting that into your life. As you said, that there is like a force that happens when we start to think things, we actually bring it into being, and especially the words that we say. So there's life and death in the power of the tongue, right? So if I wake up and I say it's going to be a bad day, I'm literally speaking it into existence. But everything that we say comes from a thought. So if my mind is saying, do you know what, everything's going to be good. I'm going to have a great day. I'm going to be successful today. Today's going to be a brilliant day. Great things are going to come my way. It's much more likely to happen because my energy is causing the very atmosphere to come in line with it. There's a really funny thing that happens, and it's a thread that runs throughout, is that when things aren't working for other people, if I go near it, it just works. And I say, that's because of my energy. And I literally say, that's because I've got positive, faithful energy. I believe that anything's possible. And I just believe that there is always going to be a way that we can work it out. It might not look great at this moment, but I believe it will be. And so I'm like, that very thing is being commanded by my energy to work. and like my team are like, no, please don't work. When Georgina comes around, I've been trying to do this for half an hour and this is not fair. But, I'm joking about here, but I believe that there is something that happens when you have so much faith. And faith is the existence of things that don't exist, right? It's the evidence of things unseen. So you are literally causing stuff to happen because you believe that it can. So I think it's very, very powerful around the way that we think and the words that we say.
I remember actually before I started this podcast, so I flew to Portugal for my sister's birthday with some friends, CEO of Morgan Stanley, and some other people. And on the way there, I just had this thought of doing something like this. But obviously I had to approach them to ask if they wanted to be interviewed. And I'd never done anything like this before. I didn't have any professional cameras. I had no journalistic experience. I'd never done it before. And we all flew out on the same plane. We got there, we got into our rental cars, drove to the hotel, checked in, we're having some drinks on the balcony. And then I'm just thinking in my head, should I ask? Should I not ask? Should I ask? Should I not ask? And then I'm saying to myself, if I ask and they say no, right, how is the rest of the holiday going to be? Because we're going to be out there for 3 days, right? And I didn't want to be in that holiday mode with a negative vibe. You know what I mean? So all these thoughts played on my mind, and then also the timing. I just get, is it the right time? Should I wait till after dinner? Should I wait till, maybe they've had a few glasses of wine? I don't know. I mean, is the timing right? And I said, well, you know what? let me think of a compelling reason to explain why I want to do what I'm doing. Okay. And then let me explain it to them. And if they agree, fine. If they don't, that's fine as well. And I did. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
We would not have been sitting here had I not overcome those fears and just done it.
Yeah.
You know, Nike have a slogan, just do it.
Absolutely.
Just do it. Now, as a CEO of a company, your own company which you founded, how do you infuse this fearlessness in your team? Because I see you've got quite a big team of people.
Yeah.
You know, and there's nothing worse when you have a corporate objective, but people are not aligned because some people are fearful. You know, some people are fearful, and are we going to meet payroll? Are we going to do this? You know, and the pursuit of success is limited by the extent to which people are pulling away from you rather than going with you, going with the flow. Okay, and you know, if you watch movies, there's often one person. There's just that one person who's fearful, and that's the guy who's going to mess up, and he's the guy who's going to cause, you know, disaster to come. How do you get people around you to embrace this fearlessness?
Yeah. So a lot of, you know, everything rises and falls on leadership. And I believe a good leader is able to bring a vision, and if the vision is compelling enough, then others will follow. And I've always made sure that the vision that I have is outside of myself. It's outside of me. You know, what we do in our organisation is not about me by any means. It's about bringing real change. And so one thing that we've done so many things. We're very much a happy, clappy, fierce organisation. So we've got that kind of oxymoron of being like calm but fierce, you know, professional but friendly. But the key parts of what it is that we do is come together for a shared vision. So it's my vision, but we all listen to each other's vision, and it's very much aligned with what it is that I've put forward to kind of spearhead this movement. And everybody realizes is that it's not a 9 to 5. When I do my interviews, I'm like, this is not a 9 to 5. If you want to kind of come in and kind of, you know, clock in and clock out, don't come and work for us, because we are fierce in the way that we move. I am like, if we're going to go for this, we're going to do it. People come and join and like, you said we're going to do this thing, and I thought there's no way that we're going to make this happen. And we did. And we're now looking back on it. You know, we had our 10-year anniversary. It was phenomenal. We did it at the NatWest building in London. It was incredible. And the day was such an impactful, inspiring day, not just because of me, because of all the people that were there and, you know, how it went. But we'd never done an event like that before. And everyone's like, well, how are we going to do this event? Like, what does she mean? What's she talking about? I'm like, no, we're going to do this event and it's going to be great. And we did it and it was great. Everybody was like, you need to do this every year, twice a year. Like, we need this. We have to have this event. So, yeah, I mean, that's just one example of that. But there is a common thread and everybody in our team knows it. If you come and work in Bud, you have to grow. There's no option. You have to grow. I'm very much a growth mindset person. I read books 24/7. I listen to podcasts. I'm constantly sharing different tools, different things. And there is an expectation that you grow. Otherwise, again, this is not the place for you. So that is the culture that we've created. We will pivot people from different kind of roles and let them work in different roles that they're really interested in, and they can grow in that, they can learn in that, but the expectation is that you grow. In actual fact, one of our KPIs is that everybody is at a level 7 minimum in their area of speciality.
And one of the things I pick up from what you just said is a certain sense of intentionality.
Yes.
You know, like I said, I've recently become acquainted with you, but then I feel that you're very intentional about what you do, and you think through things a lot, and you go for it. You really apply yourself. What can you say to somebody who's watching this about how they can nurture this spirit of being intentional and as a motivating force to going forward?
Yeah, definitely. So the key thing is understanding your why. If you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, you're not going to be motivated. You're not going to plan ahead. You're just kind of floating through life, waking up, same old. But if you've got purpose, you've got a why, that's going to pull you. And then it's creating goals. Okay, so if I know that this is my purpose, this is my plan, well, how am I going to get there? You've got to start taking steps, right? Dreams are just dreams without goals, and then goals are just goals sitting there without the steps to make that happen. So you've got to have that clear goal, smart goals, things which are, specific, measurable, achievable.
Realistic.
Exactly. And time bound, right? Yeah. So if you can't create a smart goal, then you're never going to get, if you don't know where you're going, then you're probably not going to get there. So if you are relentless in trying to achieve specific things, set the goals, but also set the time. So I am really meticulous in my diary. Everything is mapped out. Even coming here, it's like, right, I've got X amount of time to get here. It's all in my diary. How long, everything is really mapped out. And that just helps you to be intentional and to go after what it is that you really want to do and what you want to achieve. And also, as you mentioned, you said, that I reflect a lot. What's working well? What needs to change? Are people in the right places? Am I in the right place? Am I speaking to the right people? Actually, who else do I need to speak to? So there's a great book by John Maxwell that says, the best leaders ask great questions, right? Good leaders ask great questions. And so you've got to ask questions externally. You mentioned that, should I ask this question to these people? But you've got to ask great questions. One of the key questions that he says, which has changed everything, is like, who do you know that I should know? And I will be asking you that because you know some great people, but who do you know that I should know? That unlocks so many doors. But you've got to be intentional about asking those questions. And you've got to be intentional about how you use your time. You can map out your time in 3 blocks and be really clear about what you need to do now and kind of to focus on those things that need to happen. But also, what's your future asking you to do? What are the things that you need to put in place that's going to affect the future and help you reach those goals that need to happen?
Would you say that it gets to a stage where somebody who's been fearless through many situations gets to a point where their fearlessness could almost lend to a form of recklessness? I don't know if that makes sense. So the person's taking chances. You've taken risks, they've worked. You've taken risks, they've worked. I mean, I've got people who I've interviewed who are traders and stuff like that. And, maybe they've done a deal, they made some money. So guess what? They do a bigger deal, and it works. And then guess what? They do an even bigger deal and it works. And then it almost gets to that point where there's this feeling of invincibility, and based on that track record. And in that space, their thinking might get a bit clouded, a bit jaded, and there's this perception that, I'm all that, and then you make a bad call.
Yeah.
I'll give you a typical example, right? The Titanic. Okay. Titanic's a clear example.
Yeah.
It was meant to be unsinkable. It was meant to be, the most robust ship ever built, and they were warned that there were icebergs on the way. But then there was this desire to get across from Southampton or wherever they left from to the US in a record time. And the thought that the ship was unsinkable and all that, possibly, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there, but I'm just kind of trying to piece it from my perspective and possibly that might have clouded the captain's thinking.
Yeah.
And that led to disaster. So I'm just trying to, my question is, so maybe I'll ask the question. The question is, would you say that as you step out in faith and step out without fear, you still need to be careful, so that your thinking does not become clouded by your record of past experiences, past active successes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're taking risks, the more you grow, the more I think you need to take calculated risks, because I guess you've got a bit more autonomy now to, blow it all, so to say. But actually, how are you going to mitigate some of those risks, and how you're going to keep reflecting, how you're going to have the right people around you so that you keep in line with your core values around, who it is that you are and what it is that you are, what you stand for. So you've got that idea of like, actually, how can I make sure that I'm not being reckless at this point? And what will it mean, not just for me, but the people around me, the people that I'm there to support. But I think you should have some fun. I think as you become more successful, I think that gives you more opportunities, but also it gives you more responsibility. So to whom much is given, much shall be required. So for me, the more successful I've been, the more I believe that I should be supporting other people, and I support lots of different things in different ways. It just gives me more autonomy. So then I start to use it as a tool. But money makes money, so you've got more opportunities, you've got more things to do, but actually how you're using it and how you are balancing that recklessness versus risk is really important. For me, I feel like I've got the biggest safety net ever. I just pray. And I'm just like, this is what I kind of want to do. What do you think? And I'm like, well, everything outside of me, so I'll get that guidance. But I also think it's good to have a bit of a budget that you can play around with, but also to make sure that you are doing the right things. In terms of a lot of the stuff around the kind of Black fearless female, that's about building generational wealth within families. And the formula for that is really the more value you add and the more times you ask specifically equals increase in success, right? So if you add value and then you ask for something very specific that you need, it should result in you being more successful in your life and financially. But it means that you've got now a responsibility in terms of how you're going to utilize that increase and that success. And I do think it goes back to that being responsible, but also having fun, because I think life can be hard. You want to make sure you have fun along the way. And we talk, I talk about those kind of 5 pots that you need to have, and part of that is just fun, and that is just blow it. But that's 10%. We're not saying blow the 90%. Do things that you like, but keep it within your values and within the things that got you to where you are in the first place. Okay.
You did say you want to ask me a question, so I'll let you ask that question then.
Well, I can ask you afterwards, because you might not want to share. But I mean, the question that I would suggest that everybody should ask that wants to be successful. Well, number one, you need to think about who it is that you're associating yourself with anyway, because if you want to be here and everybody you know is here, that doesn't work, because you are. There's lots of books that have been written, but you are about the kind of middle of the 5 most, people that you hang around with the most, right? So you need to change your sphere of people that you're associating with. But actually, if you recognize that this person could actually probably open some doors for me. I listened to a podcast the other day and they said, look, whatever you want to do, there's no limitations to it, because somebody somewhere on this planet has access to what you need. You've just got to find your way there. And I was like, yes, 100%, right? So that key question is who do you know that I should know? And that's not something that I'm expecting you to answer right now for your audience, but it's a really good question for us all to ask. The people that maybe are just outside of our kind of normal sphere of people, and that you might need to change some of the networks that you're associating with in order to really become successful.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. It's a very interesting question. I will think about it. I'll try to give you an answer.
Fantastic.
Off camera. Before you go, I mean, one thing that you just mentioned or alluded to, and again, this brings you back to something in the scripture, which basically said that there was a time of the war, and a commandment was given to say that people who drink water in a certain way, right, should, they should be observed, right? And based on how people were drinking water, they would decide who was going to go into battle,
Yes,
and who was going to be left behind.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure you know the scripture I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And this kind of ties into what you just said. You've got to be selective about the people that you keep around you. Because the people who ended up being chosen for the battle were just a handful.
Yeah.
Okay, 300 men or something like that.
Yeah.
A handful of people. And majority of the people, were not chosen because they failed that test. And sometimes you just need to filter through, and yeah. I mean, what can you tell us about that? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think there's something really important. I love to reflect, and it sounds quite trivial. I'm not talking about this kind of Zen meditation type thing, but I'm saying, actually, how do I feel around these people? Do they add value to my life? Do they make me feel like I can win, or do they detract from me when I'm around them? That's a really good indicator of who to associate yourself with, because we can get caught up. We can have really good friends from childhood, and and all that sort of stuff. But actually, we're on a mission here. We're not just here to just pass time. We're on here for purpose, for mission. And so who do you need to be around? And you will have people that you will feed into, because it's important to always give. And again, when reflecting, I always think about, okay, I'm thinking about that around other people, but also what's my place in that? If I walk into a room, what's the energy that I'm bringing? Am I adding something into the space, or am I detracting from them as well? So it's really important to start to think about, individuals in that way. But also, you've got different associates for different reasons, and you almost need to be very clear about, well, what's the purpose of this friendship, of this relationship? How is it, where does it fit into my kind of spheres of the people that I want to work with or be associated with? And why am I friends with them? Why are they part of my sort of relationship? The people that I have relationship with. So it's assessing, really. It's assessing the people around us. What do I have now that will help me and that I can help? And actually, who else do I need? And you've got to be really intentional about thinking about those other people. And how can I support them, and how can they support me? So I talked about adding value. You've always got to start from a place of adding value to others. And then, if you scrub, as I say, if you scrub my back, I'll scrub yours. So if you can find people that you can support in a different way, maybe they could open up so many doors for you, but they just love hanging out with you because you make them feel good and you can have a laugh with them. They'll want to support you. Do you know what I mean? You tell, you're there to give them really good advice about, their friendships, their partners, or whatever it is, and just be a great friend to them. They're going to want to support you, so it's always coming with the energy, like, what value can I add, but also being very aware about what you need as well.
Georgina, what do you think of this podcast and what we're trying to do?
I think this is absolutely incredible. I really understand the deficit that is in society. That's why I started my organisation. That's why I'm like the black fearless female in that sense, because so many people that look like us are not getting access. And actually, we need to have more stories. We need to see other people that are successful, or that are, walking into their success. And actually, what did they have to overcome to get there, and what are they overcoming in that process, and how can I apply some of that to my life? I love to learn. I love to listen to stories. So as much as I can be here kind of sharing my own story, I love to listen to others. And there's always so much that you can take from listening to others. And I like to implement stuff. So when I hear those stories, like, oh, that's a great nugget. How can I apply that to my life so that I can be better, so I can be more successful? So I think having a platform like this where we can see each other and actually celebrate. I mean, I was at an event, Black Business Magazine. I'm in this edition, in actual fact, but it was so incredible to be in a room with, you know,
Dean Forbes.
I was there. I mean, it was incredible, but just to be in that room, it just lifted me. I just felt so proud, like so proud that this is us. You know, and we talk about global majority rather than global, you know, rather than Black ethnic minority, because it makes us feel diminished. It's actually we're the global majority. It's time that we amplified and looked at ourselves from this sphere that actually we haven't had access to. And again, the mindset is key. So the more we see each other and we can recognize that, yes, we've come through a lot, but it's time to celebrate. It's time to walk in our purpose. It's time to move into a place of success and build legacy, build, you know, change. And we've got to be at the beginning of that, at the hem of that, making it possible.
Thank you so much for your time. We have a tradition on this podcast where we give our guests the opportunity to dedicate the episodes that they feature on to any one or any group of people of their choice. So who would you like to dedicate this episode to? And you can look into the camera for that.
I would really like to dedicate this episode to my husband. So I talked about, you know, things that I've been through, but actually I didn't think there would be hope for me again in that area, to be honest. I just thought, that's it, you know, I'm just going to go about life on my own. But I have the most incredible husband who is always there for me, always caring, always supporting me. And he's my champion, my biggest champion. And I'm so grateful and I'm so blessed to have him in my life. So yeah, love you very much, and I'm just very, very, very grateful for you.
Fantastic. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd like you to like this video, leave some comments, and share and subscribe to help us grow this platform. I'm amazed about how fast we've grown and how quickly we've grown. But there's still a lot of impact that we can have, you know, by having more people on this platform. So please share this video, like, comment, share, and subscribe. And thank you very much, and see you next week. Thank you, Georgina.
Thank you.
We did it.
We did.